Class is now in session. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he gives you tips, techniques, and strategies to grow and monetize your podcast. Live in his Facebook group, The Better Method of Daily Audience Growth for Independent Podcasters. Learn from him and his special guests as they help you become the next podcast superstar. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, podcasters of all ages, put your hands together for your host, Phil Better!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another inspiring episode of Investing Yourself, the podcast series. I'm, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better, the podcast mogul, and I'm excited about this episode because we have the host of We Are Women, Success Secrets of Female Masterminds. And let me just tell you a bit about this podcast before I introduce the host of it. It's about facing challenges and overcoming setback is part of business. Whether you have the experience to survive them or not could mean the difference between success or failure. We Are Women podcast features revealing conversations that provide invaluable insight into the secrets of success of female masterminds. A must listen for every entrepreneurial woman. And I'm happy to have the host of We Are Women, Janeen Vosper. Janeen, thank you so much for being here.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation, Phil. Thank you for that introduction.
You're very welcome. I'm excited because, one, I love when I have female entrepreneurs on any of my podcasts because I think it's women bring a different mindset into the world of podcasting, business, or whatever you guys go into because you look at the world differently than us males, male facing, male presenting, whatever we want to call us. But I'm so excited because I love just promoting podcasts, and We Are Women. I've listened to a few episodes and my God, you got some amazing entrepreneurial women on your podcast.
I love having the women on because every time I have a conversation with somebody, I learn. And it's one of those things that I go, will I keep doing this? And well, it's free education for me. And it's a conversation with people who have got incredible insights into their expertise. And I love it. So no, I can't imagine stopping at any time.
I'm glad because I'm now a subscriber of your podcast because I just love listening to it. Plus, maybe I want to steal one or two of your guests. I'm not going to lie from my other podcasts, but no, you have amazing conversations with your guests, and it just flows so easily. Now, normally my first question is, why did you start podcasting? What was it about the world of podcasting that you decided to start a podcast?
I love that question because it's one of those ones that makes me think, well, actually, why did I start a podcast? And I started We Are Women about 7 years ago, which was when podcasts were quite a new thing. So it was a great time to get in. I wanted to share information to a bigger audience. That was really an important factor for me because I knew there were so many people and I help people build their brand. So there were so many people that were great technicians, had a lot of information, but didn't have the opportunity to get their information out there. So that was part of it. Part of it, as I mentioned, was from my education also. And it's a marketing step for those, looking for a way of demonstrating their expertise. So I built my client base through the podcast as well. So there was multiple reasons. I like things that are a little bit, that sounds like a good idea at the time. Let's just start and go and do that. And it was purely only audio when I first started.
Yes, like majority of us when we started 7 years ago or 10 years or however long ago, before the pandemic, really. I think it was the pandemic that shot video podcasting up in the world. But when you first started, there weren't a lot of women podcasts that were talking about business. I know there were a lot of true crime podcasts that women were very much into. Why did you decide to go down the business route instead of like the true crime route?
Well, I very much believe that you really do need to talk about what you know about. I think that's such an important factor. The true crime, give me a true crime novel, I absolutely will smash it out. I looked at one of the run the authors recently and how many books I've read of theirs. It was just, and not just true crime, but fiction crime as well. Gosh, I really enjoy that. But that was just not my level of expertise at all. And it very much is that space of giving women a platform, because, and I work with a lot of men as well, and I have men come say, I'd love to be on your podcast, but it is a platform for women to demonstrate. And it's been diverse. I've had, I think, about 156 interviews I have done, and the diversity of the people. So it's not just business ideas, which is, there might be a marketing expert or a business expert, but I also have mindset experts who help you through that space when you really need it, especially if you're working as a sole trader, and to keep that motivation up. But I've also interviewed health experts who will talk about different avenues to keep yourself physically healthy as well, alternative health as well as mainstream health. And I've talked to women who have collaborated with other women and had started amazing, successful multi-million-dollar businesses. So there's a whole range of ideas, and some of the podcasts will really resonate with some people, and others more so. Variety is there.
I love the variety. Like my other my entrepreneur podcast is the same thing. I interview everybody. There's to make sure that you get that flavor of the world in essence. And I love that you're doing it specifically for the women, because women need a voice. Women need to be uplifted, because like I said earlier, the women, how they view the world and how they look at problems are vastly different than how us men look at problems. So I want to go into more of the podcasting realm. When you started, did you do it all by yourself, or did you have a team around you to help you?
Interesting. For the guests originally, I started with my friends, because they were, experts in accounting or experts in entrepreneurship or in writing. So that was a great space to get really comfortable. I was very fortunate to have access to a full studio, which was great. And that was one of the reasons I also had people I knew, because they could get to the studio and we could do the interviews there. And I had access to that for about 6 months, which worked out really, really well. I was using a software called Zencaster originally, and I would then send but I don't want to, and I'm sure that they've improved the little glitches that they had during that early days. Then I had somebody in the States, because I'm from Australia, and I would send it to them and they would edit it. But really, I found once we got the sound quality, it wasn't really the software that was wasn't as great as what it could be. And I found that most people, as long as the sound's good, it didn't need the professional part of it, then I've been doing it all by myself since then. So I do the interview, and then I just do the interviews on Zoom. And create videos, put them on YouTube, put them on my website, create the audios, upload it right across all the platforms. There's a process, as we know. It's not just sitting here for 45 minutes and doing an interview. There's a process to it, and staying disciplined doing it.
Did you, when you did decide to transition over to taking care of everything yourself, doing the editing, uploading videos and all that, did you find yourself overwhelmed, or did you have the knowledge base on how to handle that, kind of like create your process, if you will, your SOP for it?
Yes, I don't get overwhelmed. It's just part of me who
You're very lucky then.
I am. It's not I won't shut down. So I tend to work through things. And I'm a big believer that we need experts in our lives who can make our life easier and do things faster and quicker for us. What I found was the components that I needed to do. I use Camtasia for my my video editing.
Mhm.
And for me, and again, got into that very, very early on, and still have the free version. They keep asking me to upgrade, but I'm just keeping that free version. And I have the intro and outro, create the artwork, and there's a process to it. And I will usually bank about 3 interviews, and then I'll edit them and create all of those platforms, and then schedule them out at the same time, and schedule them across my software, schedule across email software, schedule them for my website, schedule on YouTube, and have them all sitting there so that things happen automatically, and I can take lots of holidays.
There we go. That's the key point. I think all podcasters love the fact that once they schedule, they can get that freedom of it. I'm curious to know, like, how far in advance do you schedule your podcast? Like, do you have a huge in essence buffer for your podcasts?
If I'm traveling a fair bit, I do. If I know that I'll be away for a couple of months, then I will definitely schedule them out. And I know when I travel in 2019, I was very fortunate to be able to travel through Europe for a few months, and I had them scheduled out for 6 months then.
Wow.
So I had recorded enough and did all the pre-work. Everything was ready to go for that 6 months. I'm usually about 2 months ahead.
2 months
I've got them scheduled till February, and I'm in the process through January. Well, I will start looking for people to interview, and I've just got such a wide network so I put it out on Facebook, and if anyone's interested, and then they come back to me, or people approach me from all over the world to come onto the podcast, and then I just check them out. Really,
I love that. And when you were started, did you always have that buffer of episodes, or was that something that you learned to create as you were podcasting?
Oh, if you get to know me, I'm an organizer, and I've always had a buffer, and that helps stop the overwhelm and the pressure. And I used to have a podcast coming out every fortnight, and now it's every 3 weeks. And that has made a difference to how the capacity to get the work done, as well as all the other work that we do when we're running our business.
Yeah. So you release every 3 weeks your
Mhm.
podcast. So once a month it's released, or nearly once a month, sometimes maybe twice a month. And do you find that works really well for you as a business owner and a podcaster?
Scheduling for time-wise, for me, yes, it does. It does means I can not get that sense of overwhelm. There's too much to do. And the feedback, and it's really interesting. I think we had an off-air conversation about not knowing the lives of the people that you touch also, and whether you get feedback from your audience as to, is that a good time frame? What does that look like? And finding that what works for you and what works for the audience is the important factor. My podcasts are about 55 minutes. I originally started them around that length because I know I like to go for a walk or do a workout for about an hour. And I figured that if that's what you're going to be doing and listening to it, or a lot of the places I drive to take about an hour to get to. So I figured that would work. And if it works for me, then it, intentionally, hopefully works for my audience as well.
I love that. I love how you embodied your ideal listener by saying, look, I listen to podcasts when I'm walking or I'm driving. And as we know, Australia is very vast and there's very large portions, just like Canada. So driving for an hour, your commute, you have at least some form of entertainment. So I love that you embodied your ideal listener and when they would be listening to these podcasts. Did you create that ideal listener at the beginning? Like, I know you said you were organized, or was it something that you developed as you were podcasting?
The intention was always for that particular audience, and and that's such an important factor with anything, with marketing. I mean, the idea of a podcast, as I said, there's benefits to me, but the idea really is to promote your expertise to the market that you want to spend money with you and invest with you, and being consistent across that to that particular market. But saying that, I just don't have women who listen to it. I have men who listen to it also. It's
at least one. You have at least one man that listens to it. Now that you're 7 years into it, have some of your questions evolved? Do you have that set of questions? Because I know when I started, I had 4 set of questions and a bucket load of other questions, always ready on the go, just in case my brain flops out. Did you have that when you first started, or were you just naturally able to come up with questions?
I've kept the same questions. I like to ask certain questions to have the information beforehand, but it's really loose. It is, what do you believe, and what information do you believe that you've got as a story that could help the listeners in this as the particular audience, and what 3 takeaway points? Because once we've had a conversation for a while, we'll then come back and I always round it off with those 3 takeaway points, because we've been listening to someone for a period of time, then that helps me with when I'm writing the podcast notes as well. So is what the information that they've given me is what usually goes into the podcast notes, as well as the notes I've taken. The style, and you've listened to the style, is very much conversation style. It's I've never really had the set questions. I am a speaker coach, I feel, and a sales coach. So that really does help, that ability to think on my feet. I have to tell you a story, though.
Please, I love stories.
I was doing a podcast with a lady, and it was in the studio. It was one of the ones early on, and she taught Tantra sex. So if anyone's listening, go find that one. I did one the other day about how to get your orgasm back too, by the way. So that's
I'll definitely so everyone who's listening, make sure you check out the show notes, because I'm going to have those linked specifically for you to listen, because I'm going to go listen to those ones.
But the one with the Tantra sex, I got distracted for a couple of seconds, and I thought, I don't know what you said, and this is going through my mind, and because I don't edit the interview, it's just really just the beginning's edited and the end and the intro and outro. And I'm thinking, okay, I think that was really interesting. I said, you know what, can I get you to repeat that? Because I think it's something that we all need to hear again. I'm thinking, yeah, I need to hear that again, because I have no idea what you said. I think she was saying something, and my mind's drifted off somewhere going, that's interesting. And then I've missed the next line. So it's a good comeback line. Yeah.
I love that. That is such an important thing. Could you just simply repeat that? I think we need to hear it again. I'm just going to write that down for my notes for my future. Thank you for that.
Especially with that topic, and I know it was only audio then. I know I was blushing and yeah.
A little red like I am right now from my enjoyment of this conversation.
Yeah, so you can see it's not just business. It's
the whole life, whole aspect of life, all the different parts. I know choosing your favorite episode or choosing your favorite guest is something we should never say, because we don't want to hurt any of our previous guests' feelings or anything like that. But is there an episode, apart from the tantric sex episode, and I'm guessing the getting your orgasm back episode, that you just felt was one of the best episodes that you had? Maybe not the best, but one that stands out for you, maybe a top 10 episode or something like that. Do you have an episode specifically that stands out for you?
Not particularly, because there's interesting points in all of them. I randomly met a woman at a networking event, and we were chatting about her as an entrepreneur in a business. But then as we went further in the conversation, she was a equestrian rider who was trialing for the Australian equestrian team. So the content becomes quite interesting. And that was more of the interview, was that focus of the drive to get to that level in any sport, to achieve that. So that was really interesting. Was it a better interview than others? Not necessarily, but there's different points that pop up. And I really do, I get people who are professional guests on podcasts come to me, and their topics are great, and I will interview them. And they're usually coming in from the US, most of them. Sometimes they just seem a little rehearsed. I prefer it when it's a lot more natural and we can have a laugh and we can go off on a topic, a different sort of tangent. Because I think, and again, comes back to me, if I'm finding that we're discussing something that may not have been in the framework of what we thought we were going to be talking about, but I'm finding it interesting, then I figure that someone else is going to find it interesting. So I'll be happy to divert it. There's been a couple that I would say aren't my best ones. Yeah. One I forgot to record. That was
we talked about that before we jumped on.
Yes, and that's not nice when you got to go back. But I didn't go back because it wasn't a great interview anyway. So the heavens were in line that day, I think. And that was actually disappointing because I thought the person had a lot to offer, but it didn't end up that way. And I had an interview with a person who was a dating expert.
Ooh.
And it was interesting, but then she was very much just a heterosexual dating expert. And when I brought up other aspects of dating, she took a lot of offense to it, and it was very, very uncomfortable. It became an uncomfortable space in it, and I didn't know that was going to occur. So I just sort of moved it back into, okay, it's just heterosexual dating. We'll talk about that, as opposed to anything else it might be. So that you've got to be probably a bit more aware of that, where it was going to go, but just be able to pull things back very quickly, that you don't want to get messy, because you don't want to be arguing with your guest. It's a different opinion. We've got a different opinion about some things. So it's not the space and not time to be doing that. You're there to demonstrate their expertise. No, that's not a point. So nothing that's really jumping out as a favorite. There's interesting topics every time.
Yes,
I think the latest one I've done is a favorite. It's the next one I'll do. It'll be the favorite. Yeah.
The next episode is always the best episode. That's how you look at it, and I love that. I would love to have, since you've been podcasting for such a while now, nearly a decade, which is incredible because most podcasters fail after, or decide to hang up the boots or the microphone after like 10 episodes because of pod fade and the work that it comes with. I would love to know if you have a piece of advice for the audience who are looking to become podcasters. What's one thing you would suggest that they focus on?
Well, one thing, a couple of things. Why are you doing it? Your first question is, what's the purpose behind it, and who will you be? Who's your audience? And working in sales, as soon as people say, well, everybody I know, well, they're not going to be successful. You've really got to target who you're having a conversation with and who it's going to benefit. Of course, anyone listening to We Are Women, anyone listening to your podcast is going to get value out of it. But with yours, it's probably other podcasters are going to get the most value out of it. It would be an interesting conversation for somebody who is an entrepreneur. But if they're not interested in podcasts, it's not for them. So really nailing it and nutting down who your target market is from the beginning, and talk as if you're always having a conversation with them. That would be my biggest tips. And enjoy it. Don't stress at it. It's not life and death. Just have a conversation with somebody.
I love it, and it's true. When you're having an interview, it's a fun little conversation. I always suggest, like, pretend you're having a cup of coffee with someone. You're meeting them. Just relax and have a great time. Mind you, I do have over 500 interviews under my belt, so for me saying that, it's a little like, oh yeah, it's like I'm a self-made millionaire. My parents gave me a whole bunch of money to make my business, but it takes time. It takes time to get at ease and asking those questions, but just treat it like you're talking with a friend and you're getting to know someone. I'm wondering, apart from the tool you mentioned before, Zencaster, and I believe you use for the video, I it just slipped my mind. I
Camtasia,
apologize.
I use that, yes.
Camtasia.
Yeah.
Do you use any other tools, maybe AI tools or any tools like that to help you with your podcasting?
No, I don't with podcasting. It's all screen aired through Audio Boom, but that goes across then all the different, and that's really the only software that I use. Once I got comfortable about 100 episodes ago with the look of it, of each episode, it's just a pretty standard thing now, and that's really easy to change. Something I don't do that I've seen a lot of podcasters do, and everyone has their own style, is I don't put my face on it, and or the guest face. The image is the intent of the podcast, which is a bit different than other people do, but that's just me and the way I've chosen to do that. I want to talk about, you don't know who's listening.
Please.
Yeah, because you often you really don't hear from your listeners as to who's got value out of something. It's very, very rare. I mentioned I travel a bit, and a lot of it is through the Australian outback, and we get in the off-road van and we take off and do that. I was in this little town in outback Queensland, about 1,000 kilometres west of Brisbane, so that's not even halfway across the state, and there's a little town of 300 people. I was changing my phone over from one carrier to the next, and I was also working at the information centre using the internet because there was none locally. That was the place I could use it for free. And the assistant at the tourist bureau, she said, "Oh, look, I'll help you with your phone while you're working. I don't mind doing that." And as she's got the phone, she said, "Oh, we are women at gmail.com came up. Should I listen to that podcast?" And I said, "Oh, that's my podcast." And she's gone the whole fangirl thing. And she said, "It's changed my life. I never had confidence and belief in myself. I was in a really not a great situation, and listening to you and the people that you have on has given me the confidence and belief. I've moved to this town and got this amazing job. I've made all of these friends. I'm absolutely loving my life now. And listening to the We Are Women podcast has changed that." So you do not, and I'm in tears in my eyes now talking about it. We're both in tears. You do not know how far the ripples go. And that's, why do I do it?
If that isn't a solid reason why to do it, I love when I hear that people have seen the podcast in the wild, if you will, heard my podcast in the wild. Someone somewhere getting a message, and because you're right, us podcasters, it's a lonely game, because sometimes we don't get that interaction from our fans who, should rate and review all podcasts and send us a nice little message once in a while. I'm talking to you, listener. But it's nice when you run into a fan who listens to your podcast and you get such positivity back, like you did, Janeen, with saying, "Hey, you changed." Like, that's huge. You changed this person's life.
And this is the whole thing about what you do in life and in business. And we want to be successful. We want to make sales. We want to make money, and that happens when we have something of value to give people. That is, and if I help people work on their vision statements, goals, and things like that. But my mission is to enable people to do what they don't believe is possible. That's me. So every day when I'm working through the things I work through the jobs I have to get done, doing all the background stuff as the podcast and, the steps, because all of that, I'm very organized, but I get halfway through and go, "Oh, I don't want to be doing the rest of this." But that is what keeps me going, is that and then when you hear back from somebody that you've done that, that's just an incredible blessing.
It is. It is. I'm still waiting for that moment where someone says, "Hey, this episode was fantastic," or "You changed. I started my own business because I listened to one of your episodes." I'm waiting for that. That is a huge thing. I think that will keep me going for until I'm 99 years old, probably.
Yeah.
Getting one of those types of comments. Though I do want to know, is there a guest that you've been trying to actively get, or is there someone that you would love to have on your podcast?
Well, I'll just drop the biggest name out there. I'd love to have Oprah on the podcast. That would be, amazing. That would take the listeners list up. I think the subscribers.
Yeah, that would boost the ratings a bit.
Absolutely. There's some. I see people all the time, online. I think that would, and you know what? I hadn't even really thought about asking a lot of the ones that I follow their LinkedIn profile, or I hadn't thought about it, Phil, because I've had guests come to me all the time over that time wanting to be on. I've always been able to fill it, but I only approached one person, and so the person was so insignificant I can't remember their name, but she does massive fitness things in South Australia, and I approached her and was very polite. No for that. That's quite a number of years ago. It hasn't turned me off. I just haven't thought about it since. So thank you. I'm going to start reaching out to some of the people that I
admire and you follow. I think that would be a great idea, because why not? Yeah, because again, you never know what's going to happen from it.
Oh, it's a no until you ask. That's what when you're teaching sales, it's always a no until you ask.
Exactly. We are coming we're coming up to the end of the episode, which I hate because I'm having so much fun, learning so much for you. Where do you see yourself and the podcast in 5 years?
Again, one of the things when I work with clients, I ask them to do a couple of things. One is what do they want to create? What's the life that they want to create for themselves, or the business they want to create? And then how does that look? And then take the steps back to what do you need to do that? For me, with the podcast, I can't see it being any different than what it is now, other than me reaching out and having Oprah on there. I mean, that's going to be amazing.
Please let me know when you get her on your podcast, because that's an episode that I really want to listen to.
Definitely. I just enjoy it so much. As I said right at the beginning, it's the people I meet and have the opportunity to learn from. I'm not. I could be in the process where I would retire from everything, but I know you talk to entrepreneurs as well. What does retirement look like? You've got to be kidding. I just like building a really nice lifestyle around the work that I do and the people that I help, and so. For me, the podcast will continue probably in the same format that it has up until now, and just, getting it out there and have more and more people listening to it and hearing back from more and more people. That would be wonderful as well.
Oh, yeah. That's the big thing, getting that feedback. And I love that you want to continue until, you can't continue anymore. The gods call you back home, if you will. Janeen, I'm going to jump off here. I want you to tell my audience where they can come and support you, where they can listen to We Are Women, anything along those lines. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. You can listen to the We Are Women podcast on any of your good podcasting channels, Spotify, Apple, the whole lot. You will find it there. I think there's a couple that have got a little bit of a brand. This is just a fairly basic grey writing of We Are Women. You can't find it, drop on my website, janeenvosper.com. You can watch it from there. Also, you can watch it from Janeen Vosper on YouTube channel, and you will find that it'll maybe it might change your life, as it did with the guest that the listener that told me it. So I'd love for you to listen and give me some feedback. Thank you.
Excellent. Janeen, before we drop off, I want to know, did you give this person a shout out on the episode, on one of the episodes that told you that you changed their life?
I didn't by name, but I have mentioned her a couple of times in the episode since. So yeah.
Okay, good. Phew. And I bet she probably lit up like a star when she heard that.
Yeah.
And was able, like, listen, look, I'm on a podcast.
Oh, and I've been using it when I do networking. You've got a 40-second pitch, and I use that as a story, because stories work better in pitches than telling what you do, but the story behind it.
Oh, Janeen, I want to thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. This is our second time talking, and it's again another fabulous conversation with you.
Thank you, Phil. I've loved it. It's been great.
To my audience, check out the show notes down below, especially because I'm going to have that tantric sex episode and how to get your orgasm back, because who doesn't want to have more orgasms and better sex? But all the links will be in the show notes down below. Thank you very much to Janeen for listening and for coming on the show and talking to us. And for you guys listening at home, I thank you so much. And remember to always invest in yourself.